This is Autoline After Hours, unscripted, uncensored, unapproved. Hey, thanks for joining us on Autoline After Hours. Going to be talking about all kinds of things going on in the industry. Right, Gary?
Indeed we are.
I mean, that's what we always do. We may as well keep on doing it.
We try to.
Well,
Anyway.
we do. We do.
Yes, absolutely.
So we got to let everybody know we've got Jeff Schuster back with us today.
Jeff, we're glad to have you back.
Great to be back with you guys. Looking forward to it.
Jeff, you've got your own gig going now too, right?
Yeah, I do. So I'm kind of doing some of my own consulting. Also, just trying to figure out what part of this industry I want to be part of next. So in doing that, clearly looking at trends, looking at what's driving the automotive industry is core to my heart, and I'll always have a piece of that.
Yeah.
So you talk about like you're looking to see what area, which means that you have to look at all areas right now.
Absolutely.
How do you characterize what's going on right now?
Right now, chaos, I guess, is a good way to characterize it. I
Amen
think,
to that. Yeah.
and it's not new. We've been in chaos for quite a few years. It's different chaos, and I think it really is challenging for anyone in the industry right now to make a decision tactically and strategically, just to try to figure out what am I doing tomorrow, let alone what am I going to do 5 years from now, and plan a business. And I think that's really the area that I feel like I want to gravitate toward and work toward helping make better decisions in the chaotic market we're in right now.
You know, we've been saying that every decade.
Yeah.
We go, oh my gosh, this is so crazy, the competition and blah, blah. I would say the difference right now, though, I believe the chaos is at a level we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And if you look at second quarter earnings, boy, does that tell the story. Everybody's profits are down sharply.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, we saw Ford report a loss.
Right.
I mean, which is shocking. It's not shocking that Stellantis posted a loss because of the issues they're going through.
Sure.
But that's how I'm measuring the chaos right now is profits are evaporating in front of our eyes.
So, I mean, okay, to what extent, though, was much of the chaos before predicated more on competition in the industry, predicated on consumers shifting their focus away, say, from sedans to sport utes, things that were just sort of organic to the
Market
industry.
dynamics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Versus something that is chaotic because it's imposed from top down in terms of tariff policy.
Yeah, and I think I think you're right, John. I agree with you. We're at a level that's just unprecedented, and it's probably, Gary, when I think about that question, I think it's because it's coming at so many different angles. Your top, it's coming from top, obviously, with policy, regulatory environment, changes to policy associated with that, tariffs, of course. So that creates a chaotic environment and a decision tree that so far the industry is just saying we're going to wait. And I'll get back to that. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I think when you look at all these different issues, so it's the consumer, it's the policy, it's the technology disruption that is still going on in the background, that I think the industry is having a difficult time really working around all of these variables, which it almost looks like a tornado right now, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So John, Jeff mentioned people having a difficult time making technology decisions because of what's going on. Now, for the last several years, the technology decisions seem to me to have been, okay, do we make 1,000 EVs, or do we make 10,000 EVs, or 100,000 EVs, or by 2030, do we make all EVs? And it seems to have shifted to, well, let's ratchet that number down, but do we then go back to the guys who we've put in that back room who are developing ICE engines and maybe, give them a lamp so they can see what work they're doing?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously automakers are postponing or eliminating EV programs.
Yeah.
That's the market reality that we see right now. Yes, they are pivoting back to V8 power in some cases, bigger SUVs, full-size pickups and the like. But guess what? They already know how to make that stuff. They've already made all the investment in that. And with the Trump administration taking away any penalties for GHG emissions or fuel economy, well, you don't even really have to improve those trucks either. I think the industry is going to take this as a whopping big opportunity to cut billions of dollars in new product development and put that money to the bottom lines or help offset the costs of the tariffs and things like that. But I don't see big R&D going into IC powertrains. They're there, they work. The customer seems to be happy with them, at least in the United States. So the rest of the world, no, that there's still the emissions, there's still the efficiency requirements, there's still the ZEV credits that you have to buy. That's going away in the U.S. Yeah. So I think this is, of all the chaos, this is actually kind of a windfall for the industry, that part of the ledger.
I agree. I think it is in the short term. I think the potential problem or risk is, we all know, and you can, if you're a manufacturer, a supplier, that competitive pressure that you're always faced with, whatever the issue of the day is, that COVID, the financial crisis, we saw innovation come out of that because you had to. If you don't have to, I worry a little bit about the competitive environment in the U.S. if everyone is allowed to do basically what they want. They don't have to push any technology or push improvements to the IC or development into EVs. Or in that case, you're probably extending life cycles a little bit longer unless consumers push back and say, no, I want my vehicle needs to be new. That creates, I think, a different environment.
Sure, because look, what's management's going to be under pressure from? They're going to be under pressure from their boards to maximize private profits and drive shareholder value. And then it becomes an easy decision. If I put all this money into EVs, I'm not going to get my big bonus. So I'm not going to do that. Now, but I do think they have enough smarts to know that EV is the future. Yeah. It may be farther down the line than we thought. And so you better not just give up on it, because there's probably going to be some period in the 2030s where you're going to get your head cut off because you just were not competitive.
Okay, so who's running any one of these companies that worries about what's going on in 2035? I mean, it's just like, look,
no, I'll tell you who does.
They're measured on what they're doing right now.
No, you're absolutely right. But Bill Ford worries about what's going to be going on then. I would say
because of his kids,
because it's a family operation. I would say same thing with Akio Toyota. He's going to worry about future generations and
it's a legacy.
It's a legacy, exactly. So, but the others are just guns for hire.
Right. So it seems to me that if your bonus is predicated on what you did this quarter, or
it's all short term, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's just like, so you're saying, okay, they don't need to spend all of this R&D money, okay? So do they take that R&D money and do something else with it? Or do they take the R&D money and say, we don't need to spend it, we're going to keep it, or we'll buy back stock, or we'll do something that will have a financial impact on right now versus what's going to happen 5 years from now?
That's the incentive for them. There's the carrot, maximize shareholder value. Yeah. And they're going to be under enormous pressure to do that. Except that, as I've said, there's certain family entities, the Chung family at Hyundai, for example. What's the family that owns BMW? I'm blanking out on the name right now.
Oh, is it Quant?
Yeah, the Quant family. The Quant family. I mean, they're not going to want to see BMW go away.
Right. Okay. But see, I would make the argument that, okay, if you look at Hyundai or you look at BMW, that they are still facing the competitive pressures that we talked about before, because basically they're competing around the world, and around the world still has things like emissions regulations, and so they're needing.
And I think that's a big challenge for those type of companies, because they're pushing hard into EVs, and if that's not what this market wants, they're going to. So now you have to serve multiple markets, and I think you're spreading yourself out. And yeah, I totally agree. We're not going to see development R&D into ICE. It's just it's going to be what it is, and you can do some tweaks here or there, but that's just going to run
good
for now.
enough.
It's good enough. Could it be could you do more? Of course, but it's not worth it. It's diminishing returns, I think, at this point.
Look, we've been working on the internal combustion engine for what, 140
120
years or something like that. It's about at its maximum. You know, the thing I like to point out is internal combustion engine actually very inefficient. And the point I make is Formula One engines, which cost $10 million a piece, and they throw every tech trick in the book at them,
Sure.
are 50% thermodynamically efficient, i.e., they waste half the energy in a gallon of gasoline. These are the bleeding edge and cost is no object kind of engines.
Right.
And that shows you're never going to get better than that. And so why invest more to get, eensy teensy fractions of an MPG? Now, when there were MPG fines for missing it,
Sure.
oh yeah, now it's worth spending money to avoid the cost of the fine.
Okay, so let's say there's a person who is going to be going into buy a new vehicle, and they can buy a Hyundai that has been doing lots of development on ICE engines as well as on fuel cells and hybrids and plug-in hybrids and EVs. I mean, they've covered the table with bets.
Yep.
And their MPGs are 10 miles per gallon greater than something you can buy from a Ford or a GM. Isn't Hyundai in a better position to get the sale?
Absolutely. Sure. I mean, there's going to be a lot of the car buying public who's going to do their research, look at the fuel economy ratings, and go, boom, this is the one for me. If it's made by Hyundai, who cares? That's what I want.
Mm-hmm. So Jeff, I mean, you were suggesting earlier that it's going to be more of a regional market rather than a global market.
Right.
Now, is it 3 regions or just 2 regions? And with the 2 regions, I would say you take the EU and you combine it with China and say, okay, they're sort of looking for the same things, and then the 3rd region being the US, or the 2nd region.
Yeah, and obviously then you've got more emerging markets, and not everyone's competing in those. Parts of South America, Southeast Asia, some of those markets are going to be different. Obviously, Africa, of course. So that you have nuances in each of those markets. India is a unique market as well. So there are multiple markets, but I think, when you're looking at your mainstream markets that drive most of the volume, you're down to U.S., maybe even more isolated than calling it North American market now. And then you've got the other EU and China. I think in Japan, Korea, you could maybe a little different as far as how it's being developed, but similar patterns there. So in terms of the regulatory environment. So I think it really isolates the U.S. in the current environment. And it is also for a consumer that wants whatever they want and doesn't want to be told what to drive or where it has to go. I think it's potentially good. They like that. But I think, again, it's a more of a short-term benefit, and maybe a short-term benefit to the manufacturers. On the regulatory side, obviously the tariff side is still playing out, and I think I throw some caution on not to pivot on you guys yet, but throw some caution on sales to date look better than they probably will at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's talk about that, because you've done a lot of forecasting work. I haven't gone in and dug into all the numbers, that the SAR last month was 16.9 million. Is that right?
Yeah, high 16s. Yeah, I think I had it.
Floored me.
Absolutely.
Floored me. I thought by this time the automakers would have run out of all the pre-tariff cars, and that they would have had to raise prices or at least remove incentives on even stuff built in the U.S. I was sure that sales were going to start dropping in July. In fact, they hit the highest SAR rate that we've seen in a long time.
Quite a while, yeah. Yeah.
What's going on there?
July was
quite
an interesting month. June was definitely soft. So I think you've got if you look at the trend between the two, you've got a little play there. So maybe there were some reasons why things pushed into July. But then I think if you look at consumers are paying attention to headlines, and when they are expecting tariffs to impact pricing and potentially availability or choice, because certain vehicles are going to possibly rise higher than others. I think it's more of a spreading it out than what the general consumer probably thinks. But that notion of rising prices coming, and if it hasn't yet, let's get it. If I need something in the near future, let's buy now. And I really think that drove July. It obviously had we saw EVs through the roof because of the credit disappearing next month. So if you pull all of that together, it was a fantastic month, but I think it comes with some caution on, did we buy from future months?
That's how I feel. But, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised at the July numbers, but I think it's pull forward sales.
I think it's pull forward.
Yeah. So this is Aaron Keating of Cox Automotive wrote this. The Cox Automotive team still expects consumers to see retail prices climb by 4 to 8% by year end, with price increases accelerating as 2026 model year vehicles hit the market. In other words, the sticker prices will go up for those higher than they probably would have where they're not tariffs.
Right.
Okay. She wants to write, we expect the average price of a new vehicle in the U.S. to break the $50,000 barrier in 2025 as automakers begin to pass along the cost of tariffs and the market sells a larger share of higher end vehicles. Our forecast for new vehicle sales remains below the 16 million unit mark for the year, a decline compared to 24 as higher prices continue to move the auto market in a direction that favors high net worth households with excellent credit, leaving many on the outside looking in. So what happens to the auto market in the United States when it's above 50 and lots of people can't afford that?
Affordability has been an issue. It will continue. That's a major driver, obviously, of demand and volume, ultimately, where volume ends up. And I think you, again, have the risk of displacing a lot of would-be new car buyers when prices continue to edge up because of this. We've already seen the pullback in incentives, maybe not as great as I would have expected at the initial announcement, I guess, of tariffs. The delays, some of the deals being made is impacting things favorably, so they're not as dire as they were looking like they might be. But I think at the end of the day, vehicle manufacturers cannot continue to absorb this cost. We've seen what it's done so far.
It really hurt their bottom lines.
Hurt the bottom lines,
and it's only going to get worse.
Well, and the warnings that they've put out in their earnings calls, if that doesn't signal something,
right,
that it's going to get much worse unless something changes. So they're going to pass. They can't continue to absorb it. They're going to have to pass it on.
Right, because I thought that they would share the pain with their customers. Yeah. They haven't. So they've eaten most of the pain, and the pain's really going to the shareholders. Because when all these earnings came out, boom, stock prices went down.
Right.
And they're going to hear bloody hell from shareholders and investor groups, which is going to put pressure on their board. And the board's going to say, look, you got to raise prices.
And then that has spillover effect. That affects production levels. It affects then those workers at those plants that potentially are going to be shut down temporarily. So yeah, this will ripple through the industry, I think. So there's definitely some concern in my mind when I look at the rest of the year as we just try to navigate all these variables that are out there.
So you were mentioning that EV sales, I mean, people are like, oh, we got to, if you want one, you get one now. You don't wait until after the $7,500 tax incentive goes off of them.
Sure.
What do you think is going to happen to that segment of the market in the United States?
I think the second half is, well, call it the fourth quarter. So after September, I think it's going to be quite challenging because not only are you going to have that issue of the credit disappearing for future buyers, but anyone that was considering or even had a thought of an EV, they're rushing out and buying it. So you've got a massive pull forward. So there's going to be a vacuum, I think, for EV sales in the fourth quarter that are going to be quite challenging.
So it's, and then
come back to earth. Because, we saw over the course of the last 18 months or even longer, we saw the kind of the weaning of the consumer with EV growth, not necessarily disappearing, but the growth that we have been experiencing in the U.S. has disappeared. And then recently it just has recovered, and that's all primarily because of the credit pull forward. So once that's gone, the drive goes away. So ultimately, that's something we've in the industry have talked about for a long time. The EVs are going to eventually have to stand on their own without a credit. So does this pull that notion forward a little bit, maybe, and create an opportunity for an automaker or not consumers, automaker and product developers to figure that formula out?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the segment to a degree, in the sense that I think luxury EVs will probably not be too impacted by the credit going away, because either the vehicle was too expensive itself and didn't qualify, or the person buying it has too high of an income to be able to qualify.
Exactly.
And so I don't see those sales being affected one iota. The real thing is going to be, what the hell is Ford going to announce on Monday with the Skunk Works project? Right. When is GM going to bring, well, we know next year GM's bringing back the Bolt. Where are they going to price that? If they price it at $28,000 or something like that, I'm making it up. I don't know where they're going to price it.
Okay, but before we go to, I'm going to get back to these more expensive vehicles that you're assuming are going to be just fine. Okay, right. So Lucid came out with its numbers, and it had a net loss of $790 million.
Right.
Okay, and it's lowered its production outlook, and this, I think, is the biggest red flag you can possibly have. So this is from Mark Winterhoff, interim CEO at Lucid. In Q1, we mentioned our ongoing relationship discussions to develop new revenue streams for our EV technology and beyond, meaning we got to figure out something else to do with this technology.
We want somebody else to buy it.
Right. The expensive cars.
That's what that
was. He goes on to say, the Robo taxi partnership we announced with Uber and Nuro is a perfect example aligned with that strategy. Now, here's the big red flag. We also continue to double down on increasing our brand awareness, introducing Timothée Chalamet, an award-winning actor and cultural icon, as our first global brand ambassador. So they're rolling out Bob Dylan Jr. and saying he's going to be the brand ambassador for Lucid, and this is going to save us, right? Okay, so Lucid, at this point, high-end cars, right? The Lucid Gravity, which will be lower, but still at the higher end of the lower scale, or however we want to look at that. Then Rivian, net loss of $1.1 billion. And they're all happy because it's an improvement over its $1.5 billion loss last year at this time. How can these companies afford to lose this money?
Well, you look, they can't, number one.
No.
But I would say you're cherry picking the data there. So I would say, look at Cadillac EV sales. They're strong. They're going pretty good. I think they'll be largely unaffected by the $7,500 going
And
away.
I think Lucid and Rivian have other issues going on. They're trying to gain awareness still, build a brand. That's a tough road in itself.
It has been, but remember, about this time next year, Rivian will have the R2 out.
Yes.
Much cheaper vehicle. It's still not cheap. I'm just saying cheaper
than what they've got.
Than what they've got. Yeah. Smaller size, more garageable, blah, 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 kind of a thing. I'll bet their numbers start to look a whole lot better when that happens.
But didn't we just sort of posit that EV sales are going to go into the tank? Therefore, where's the demand for these vehicles?
No, what I've said is I think it's going to be segment dependent.
I think there are two, maybe more than two markets. But I think the luxury, I would agree, John, the luxury EV market is somewhat isolated from that. Now, it may not be growing substantially as a whole, but it probably holds its own, certainly more than the mainstream market, the under $50,000 EV. And for those that are launching and trying to find an affordable EV without that credit, I think, again, it's going to be challenging. So it'll be interesting to see what Ford and ultimately then what GM does with the Bolt.
Right.
So you guys are still EV positive.
Cautiously.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a really challenging market, tough. Some will end up being okay. And I think those that push into those those high net worth individuals going after that market, they're probably going to be okay, but they still have to convince that buyer to buy an EV. So I think there still are challenges.
Okay, but we've also heard that Mercedes, high end, basically saying, about those EVs, we still got ICE in our plans until 2035.
Well, look,
Sure.
Mercedes has done a pretty poor job with its EVs. They have not contrast their performance in EVs to BMW's. BMW is doing a great job. They're just about to launch their new class of vehicles this year,
which is a portfolio approach. They've got
It's across, yep,
many powertrain options.
right?
correct.
Right, but yeah, Mercedes has not done a good job. Audi seems to be stumbling right now. Porsche got out of the box really strong, but it's only had the Taycan, and everybody who was going to buy a Taycan has essentially bought one. And so you need more product out there, fresh product. But you got to be careful too, because the pie's not growing. We had Michael Robinett here last week, and he made the point, look, the pie's this big, and now all these new EV models are coming in, so you're just going to slice the pie
thinner. Yeah. And that's something that we've looked at for a while now. When you look at the EV market, it's going to have to grow like this to accommodate all these new players and all the push into that market, and looking at average volume per model, that has to go down.
Right. So I would say I'm pessimistic on EV short term, but I still believe the future is EV.
So Jeff, is the EV pie going to stay essentially the same size, or is it going to grow? And if it grows, how is this growth going to be comparable to the growth that we're likely to see in hybrids and plug-ins and straight ICE?
Yeah, you mentioned a portfolio approach, and I think that's probably the smart decision right now. And yeah, again, you're kind of spreading things. You're spreading inventory thin as far as having a lot of options available, but that's, I think, the best approach for this type of an environment. So EV, in terms of pie, if we talk specifically about the US, I think the near term, and call that 2, 3, 4 years, EV sales probably take a hit. I think that's pretty clear from where, maybe not from where they are today, but from where they were projected. That's all come back. The road to 50% market share has been pushed out as well. So the near term, what's happening right now with the regulatory environment here, that's probably not forever. But I think what it's done is it's pushed everything out as far as adoption. So the growth, I think, will still come to the EV market. It may look different than it was going to, and it's going to be a lot slower than it was going to. But I kind of share what you said, John. I think ultimately that's still where things go, unless out of nowhere comes a technology that we're not talking about right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You mean a technology in terms of propulsion systems, or?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I know, and I don't know much about it, and I'm probably not free to talk about it, but I know of a radically new kind of engine that would be brilliant as a range extender. Very small, very lightweight, very, very efficient. So to propel a car, probably not, but to run a generator, bingo. This thing could take a lot of costs out of e-revs.
Okay, John, I'm looking at the Cadillac sales numbers for the first half.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that the Escalade alone outsells all.
Oh, yeah. No,
and including the Escalade IQ,
Yeah,
which
right,
is their electric
right,
version.
Of course.
No, but what you have to look at is the sales growth at Cadillac with EVs, and it's really impressive. And I want to say they ended up at the end of June with like 30% of their sales being EVs.
So I have to adjust my glasses here so I can make sure that I'm seeing this.
Those small numbers.
So the Cadillac Lyriq, first half down 28.8%.
Correct, but that includes the introduction of the Optic. And I think if you add the two sales together, you're going to see that it was way better than Lyric did before. I think Optic
Well, I
just
mean,
cannibalized Lyric.
you just add more product, then yeah, you're naturally going to have greater numbers.
But the Optic is awfully compelling.
It is.
The package for the price, man, that's a
price point is a sweet spot, I think, in the market. It visually and what it offers, I think, is very competitive. So yeah, I would agree. Challenges still. I think, playing which shoulder do you want to sit on, I think makes sense. But when we look at it, I expect to see growth with Cadillac.
Okay, but if we look at overall market in terms of purchasers of EVs, okay, so now, I mean, we still haven't busted 10%.
Right.
Okay. And this year it was looking like maybe we'd get to 9%. This year we're probably not going to get to 9%.
We're not going to get to 9%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes of, okay, if we hit 8% this year, what will next year be? Will it be 10% or will it be 9%? And if it's still 10% or lower, and we've described that the pie is being all sliced up, where does anybody get any scale, and where does anybody make any money?
Well, this is why I like GM's Ultium platform, where you have one platform essentially, one set of electric motors, inverters, chargers, everything. You just change the top hat. Maybe you change the kind of modules or amount of modules of batteries that you got, but everything else is pretty much the same. So you get the scale in the really expensive stuff.
Yeah, you absolutely. You get scale by spreading that across the entire EV lineup instead of, a traditional ICE platform might have 3-4 vehicles on it. They're more. Obviously, they go more than that, but on average. But if you can do that EV platform and spread that across your entire EV lineup, and if you're planning it accordingly, planning it correctly, not everyone does that when they're developing vehicles. But if you can share as much as you can, that doesn't matter to a difference between a vehicle or a brand, it can go a long way to help with that efficiency and scale. It's not easy to do. That's the problem.
Right. And if you expand that a bit to certainly e-revs.
Oh, yeah.
They use the same batteries, maybe smaller, but same batteries, same motor, same inverter, same charger, same everything. So that's why I'm intrigued by the extended range EV segment.
Okay, so if I'm General Motors, am I going to make more money off of a Escalade, Yukon, Silverado combo versus fill in the blank?
Yes.
Ultium. Yeah. So
of course you are.
So if I'm running General Motors, what do I do?
Which is the challenge if we bring that back to shareholder value and what do you do in the short term with your decision making? That's a tough conversation to have with your board and your management team on. Well, we need to stay the course and keep pushing into this when, I mean, your Yukons and Escalades, they can go on autopilot essentially. I mean, yeah, of course, you've got to put development into it, but that still needs to pay the bills.
How can we make a bigger grill?
Yeah, that's right. But
bigger taillights, right?
GM is kind of being hurt by this because they went all in.
Because they went all in.
They went all in, and now they've got this full lineup of EVs that are tooled. You got to go through with
manufacturing,
right?
Plant
and
conversions.
Farley's talked about this. They didn't go down that route, at least not at the speed GM did. And now GM's got to take all these products into production and go through their life cycle. And Ford is sitting back and saying, we'll step into the market in about 2 years when everything should be better. And that's going to be an advantage for them.
But will things be better in 2 years? I don't understand how the numbers play out.
Here's how. Because in 2 years, you're going to see second-gen platforms that take a lot of cost out. Everybody's flipping over to LFP batteries, which are 20 to 30% cheaper right off the bat there. And they keep learning and learning and learning, bit by bit, nibble by nibble, how to make these things more cheaper and efficient. So in 2 years, you're going to see a better cost of
Yeah,
EV.
and I think if we kind of take that notion and talk about that risk I mentioned earlier about the environment in the U.S. of not driving innovation, by removing that tax incentive, the credit, maybe that does potentially create an opportunity to drive innovation, to push how do we take cost out of these, how do we improve the efficiency of the development of and manufacturing of an EV to compete in a market when I don't have that credit. So not everyone's going to take that challenge on because there's costs associated with that. But I think those that are able to do that and are successful, that'll set them up, I think, for the long term.
I agree. And they got to pick their targets.
Yes.
We're not going to do all these vehicles.
No.
We're going to do, we think we can hit success here in this segment and that segment. And then to your point, let's put all our resources into taking cost out.
Yeah. And then you can apply that to the rest of the lineup once you've figured it out.
Right. There was a Buick that came out this week in China. Did you guys see that?
I did see
the
that.
Electra Orbit. Sean,
That
do you
was-
got a picture of that?
That was really interesting.
Oh, you don't have the Electra Orbit. That was electric, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, and I'm sorry, we should have had a picture to put up. You guys can all do a search for it. That is a compelling product. I was knocked out by the styling.
Okay, you saw the styling. Would you care what was under the hood or wherever it's located?
No, you're right.
So again,
No,
it's the design.
The design was
It was very compelling.
yes.
Right. But if you were Buick and said, yes, and the only way you can buy this design is to get an electric version, people are going to say, damn, I want an electric.
Take an electric vehicle now. Yeah.
Okay, and let's say that you're running Buick and you say, the only way you can get this vehicle is to buy one, and we will put whatever powertrain you want in this vehicle. What are you going to sell more of?
You're going to sell more ICE or hybrid, probably,
Right.
because hybrid's the hot thing.
So this is the thing that you guys are both saying, okay, in 2 years, I'll take the money, cost out, blah, 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 blah. It'll still be comparable. I mean, this is what they're talking about. We want ICE comparability.
I'll give you a good example, Gary, and this goes back decades. I remember when the Japanese automakers started putting 4-speed transmissions, automatics, in their cars. And I remember the then head of engineering at Ford saying, you don't need it. You don't need a 4-speed. It's not going to get you better acceleration. It's not going to get you better fuel economy versus the way that we have paired our 3 speeds with our big V8 engines. It would make no sense for us to go to 4-speed. We're only going to add cost. Well, guess what? The Japanese were able to sell the advantages of 4-speed. Right. Oh, it's got 4 speeds. And the public went, yeah, that's what we want. And that's the danger I see, is that if you don't stay current with EV technology, there's going to come a point several years down the road where you're going to be caught with your 3-speed automatic that nobody wants.
Okay, and to go back to last week's show with Michael Robinet of S&P Global Mobility, said he is afraid we are going to become a technology backwater.
Correct.
Okay, and it seems to me that what he's saying in that statement is, yeah, we'll have the guys back there in that room. They'll be reading up on these new developments,
staying current. Right?
They're going to be staying current. So yeah, we won't fall behind.
We're good.
We may not talk to them very often, but
right.
Because you know what, we're going to sell the hell out of all these other vehicles. And I mean, but they've lost so much money. I mean, so what General Motors is thinking is going to lose $5 billion this year. Okay,
on EVs.
No, because of the tariffs.
Yeah,
$5 billion.
It's probably another $5 billion with EVs.
Yeah.
But
probably.
At some point, they got to start making this money, and they're not going to make this money.
Try to stop the bleeding somehow. And that comes probably at the cost of development.
Right. There are some offsets. Like, we know for a fact they're going to save billions not having to buy ZEV credits, not having to pay fines for missing fuel economy targets, being able to throttle back on their capital investments and on their R&D because, they can build a lot more ICE products that are fully engineered.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, if you are boy, I'm speaking out of like 8 sides of my mouth. Okay, so you're Mary Barra or you're
Yeah.
Bill Ford or Jim Farley or I mean, and suddenly you're saying, wow, I can sell these V8s. This is good stuff. How do you tell the market those EV things are they're fine, they're good, but
Two different customers.
You know what? Okay, but are there a sufficient number of customers even to address these guys, these EV people? I mean, isn't this sort of like saying, you know what, we need more convertibles because you know what, there's a certain segment of the public that really likes convertibles.
So I think what we're missing in what the industry was going through heading up to this pullback in the regs and in the credits and the push for EVs, and this goes along with it too. And this is maybe a risk for that 2 years and after 2 year period is we were still educating consumers on EVs, the benefit of EVs, putting some of the concerns at bay. They're still out there as far as some of those issues, the infrastructure, which is now going to take longer to get where it needs to get. So I think there's still a lot of risk, and this pause that we're on is going to, again, extend things. We don't ultimately know what that looks like because of this, because you still have to convince a consumer. And I think right now, those that want an EV probably have, and yeah, there's some that we're considering, and that's going to push them off for now. If you then don't convince them that the infrastructure is there to support their EV that they just bought when they want to go on a road trip or just want to charge somewhere away from their home, I think you have more challenges in front of you. So I think, yeah, I'm, again, going back to positive on EV market growth, but I think the risks are still mounting, and things that we were talking about and dealing with and said had to be solved before we saw a market move heavy into EVs, that's all still there. And convincing the consumer, there's been movement in that. And I think those that are considering EVs, those numbers had gone up prior to this pullback, but you still have to ultimately convince them price, the performance aspect, or just the characteristics of the EV driving experience, the infrastructure. What do you do about the battery range? What do you do about the battery life? All of that, is still something the consumer has to deal with, and we hadn't gotten far enough, at least in the U.S., to make that happen.
So, I mean, talking about the consumer, Edmunds had some shocking numbers, I thought, in terms of people who are going to buy a new vehicle and trading in their existing vehicle. So for 2025, the share of vehicles purchased with a trade-in was 45.7%. So almost half people have a trade-in and they're going to buy a new car, right? Share of trade-ins with negative equity, 26.6%. Amount of negative equity on average, $6,754.
Yeah, it's a bit of a red flag.
Oh my God. I mean, it's just like, so
look, it's not a new problem.
No,
it's not a new. This has been around for years, where
Yeah.
people are upside down in their car loans,
Okay.
i.e., they owe more than the vehicle's worth.
But if they go back to 2019 in their numbers, and we're setting a record.
Yeah, I look, I
And-
can believe it, and the reason, of course, is car prices are super high, interest rates are super high.
right.
And so
terms are
people-
getting extended.
Correct. And so somebody that might have had a good credit score when the interest rate was 3% do not have a good credit score when it's at 9%. And so,
But they're buying a new car.
correct. Right.
Average trade-in age in years, 3.8.
Wow,
Yeah. So,
that's young. Yeah.
and we're talking about like, oh, but they're going to buy EVs. Well, how? Where's the money going to come from?
Look, people they make sacrifices. Not everybody, but people who want a new car and are on the edge of not getting a car loan or a lease, they'll make sacrifices to get what they want. And the people who are coming in trading cars that they're upside down on, you know what they do? the dealership will happily roll that money that they owe into their new loan. And all they care about is, can I afford that monthly
What's the
payment?
monthly payment? They don't even look at what happened to get to that monthly payment.
Correct.
You're right.
But if the dealer says, and I think we're at $700 a month average right now, if the dealer says, hey, look, I can make this work for $700 a month, bingo, I'm in. Sign me up. I want a new car.
All right, I want to talk about a fun topic now.
What?
So there was a motorist on July 28th who was clocked on the Autobahn going 199 miles per hour in a Porsche Panamera.
He should have gotten a Corvette ZR1X and gone 233 miles an hour.
So it was more than 124 miles per hour above the speed limit.
Because everybody thinks there's no speed limit on the Autobahn. There's a lot of speed limits on the Autobahn these days.
There are
very
areas
few open
Very
spots.
few open. Yeah.
So
you think he was angry about that 1 mile an hour though?
that he didn't get
Want to
200.
He didn't get
200.
200 mile an hour.
200.
Yeah, probably
I would
pissed.
be.
Should have folded the mirrors in.
So he got a fine of $1,043 and 2 points on his license. So what do you think about that, Jen?
What? That he
But they-
should not have been going 199 in a speed limited area. He should have waited until there was open Autobahn. Maybe he ran out of open Autobahn. But this gets to, I mentioned the ZR1X. They just announced the price today, $207,000. I mean, it's a track car.
It's a
It's
track car.
233
Yeah.
mile an hour that Mark Royce himself, president of GM, was
Right.
able to clock officially. Meanwhile, Ford's got this Mustang GTD, which is also a track car, for $328,000. So $120,000 more than the Corvette. The Corvette's got 200 horsepower more than the Mustang,
Right.
lapped the Nürburgring at, I think it was 2 or 3 seconds faster than the Mustang. And I can't wait to see what Ford comes back with, because, they can't take this sitting
No,
down.
they can't. No question about it. They've just been smacked.
They've been smacked good. And, how does Corvette do this? I mean, $207,000 is way above what I'm ever going to pay for a car. But, $328,000 for a GTD versus $207,000 for the Corvette.
That's a bargain, right?
Yeah.
So
It's a bargain.
what's the market like for these vehicles?
Very small.
It's very small.
It's not about volume. It's
No.
about brand image. It's about keeping, the base Corvette Stingray relevant. It's about keeping the 2.3 liter turbo Mustang relevant to the
I
buyer.
bought this, and that my car's similar to that. It's related. Yeah, it's a halo. It's a halo.
Does it work?
It has worked over the years. So yeah, I think it does. It's from an image standpoint and just kind of creating that buzz around the entire vehicle line. It does work. And there are buyers obviously that aspire to
So
that.
some guy who's going in and he buys a Chevy Colorado pickup goes, but you know what? This is a Chevy.
It's the same. No, I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
it might be pushing it a little too far.
Right. That does. But look at how well Dodge managed the Charger and the Challenger.
Yeah.
Oldest platform in the book, old as the hills. But they came out with the 390. They came out with the Hellcat. They came out with all these special packages that had a limited run and created a demand. I want to get that one.
Before it's gone.
And
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they kept that car line going like I can't, and they made good money off it. As old as it was. I mean, there's a lesson in that, right? If you market well, if you keep the thing fresh and relevant, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money doing
there's different
all new
ways
platforms.
Different ways to keep it fresh and relevant.
Right.
Obviously get the specs up, create something that, and again, that doesn't appeal to every buyer, clearly, but there's the enthusiasts out there that it does appeal to and strongly. And that marketing and creating those special run vehicles brought some youth back, also excitement into the enthusiast market and for those products.
Right.
Okay, so John maintains we've reached peak car, meaning
Peak auto.
peak auto.
Because,
Well, okay,
more
but
than just
car,
cars,
but-
trucks,
but-
vans.
So So we're on the downward slope, and so here's a vehicle that's bringing in some enthusiasm. As you look out,
Mm-hmm.
how does it look globally, even for the automobile industry?
Are we at? I don't think we're at peak per se, but I think the growth and the track that we were on pre all the various market disasters that we've gone through over the last 15 years, I think that has taken the wind out. And I think it comes down to affordability. And that's an issue not just in the US, but everywhere. And I don't see that issue going away. So I think if you pull that in as the driver, and if that's a given, that vehicle affordability is going to be challenging for most consumers around the world, maybe we are at peak, or growth rates certainly slow immensely. And we don't see these recoveries back to the high volumes of, the 17 and a half in 2018, 2017, right? I don't think we get back to those days globally. I don't think we get back to them in the US either.
Yeah. And it's not just affordability. I think that's number one, but you have an aging population. You have a middle class whose income has flatlined for years. And you put all that together, and that's why I believe we're at peak auto.
And maybe to argue toward that peak, and again, I think this is a little further out as well now. It's certainly not going to happen as soon as previously thought, but whether you call it a robo-taxi or just car sharing or ride sharing, that's still going to be a factor at some point, and I think will affect auto ownership and affect annual volume. And there's different arguments there. These large fleets are going to have to get replaced. The turnover on those is much faster than an ownership model, but I think you need less of them than you do if we're going by home or by individual ownership.
Right. And I would also argue that if fleets are going to have robo-taxis, they're going to start specifying their vehicles that they buy differently.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Class 8 semis, the tractor. They'll last 1 million miles easily. And you know what? All things considered, they're not that expensive. I mean, a tractor, cab, sleeper is about $140,000, $150,000. I mean, so you could easily design robo-taxi fleet vehicles to last 1 million miles, and without them being cost prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
So you were mentioning earlier about different markets. I thought it was interesting yesterday that Hyundai and GM announced that they're going to be collaborating on an SUV.
Yeah, what do you make of that, Gary?
Pickup. So we got to give the background to everybody.
Give the background. Yes.
So they're doing design and engineering work for new vehicles for the Central and South American markets, and this will be for a mid-sized truck, the car and SUV, and then they're going to do an electric commercial van for North America, so meaning here. So, I mean, they announced that they were going to be collaborating, I want to say about 8-9 months ago, that they didn't say what they were going to be collaborating on, and everybody's saying, "Oh, it'll be supply chain, and they'll be doing this." But
efficiencies in purchasing,
right. And now they're saying, "No, we're gonna do vehicles, and we're gonna do vehicles for what arguably is mainly emerging markets still." I mean, South America has been.
I found that really interesting because the volume really isn't there. These are markets that, especially Brazil, was the market that everyone kind of said would be one of the next growth markets, and it just, for various reasons, hasn't gotten there. Yeah, it's still a strong market in the sense of 3 million-ish units, and if you combine that with Argentina and Chile, and you can build maybe a decent sized market, but that it struck me as an odd focus on where you would develop the vehicles for.
So would you think that they would develop them for this market or a Western market, as it were?
I would have thought more of call it Asia, Europe, Japan, Korea, throughout mature market. I would say mature market is what I would label it as. That's where I thought they might go and try to get scale there. The CV for the North American market, I think built in the U.S. is the plan. From what I recall.
Yeah, the commercial van will be manufactured in the U.S. as early as 28.
That's interesting.
See, but the thing I wondered about was, okay, what happened to BrightDrop?
Yeah,
Right.
Remember?
You took the
I mean,
words out of my mouth, Jerry.
it's like,
That's a good point.
What happened to BrightDrop?
Right.
and and here was and if you looked at the specs of that thing, wow, this is a pretty amazing vehicle. And remember, they had, FedEx announced, oh yeah, we're gonna be buying these, and now there's gonna be this other commercial van.
I think Hyundai takes the lead on this. If I'm not mistaken.
Hyundai Kia have developed a really interesting commercial electric platform, that can be sized up and down. I'll bet it's built right off that.
Okay, but here's the thing. The development is for vehicles that will have either internal combustion or hybrid propulsion systems, not EVs.
For the commercial vehicle?
It's the SUV, car, and pickup, as
Okay.
well as a midsize pickup, all with the flexibility to use either internal combustion or hybrid.
I think that's for
propulsion
the
systems.
South.
That's
and
for
Central
South
American
America.
market. I
Right.
think the U.S., if I'm not mistaken.
The electric commercial.
Yeah.
van.
Yeah, but in those markets are just not ready for EVs from an affordability standpoint.
Don't tell that to BYD. They're big.
That's a fair point.
But I like your point.
I should say non-Chinese EVs that
right.
are priced like they are not EVs.
See, to me, it kind of makes sense for GM and Hyundai to look at South America first. Here's why. Let's stick our toe in the water. We don't know really how we're going to work together. Remember, GM just had this great deal going with Honda, and then what came apart, and they've never explained what the hell happened there. Now they've got a new deal with Hyundai. I'd say let's go a little slow. Let's test the market before we get into the serious stuff. Also, remember, most of GM's vehicles that it sells in South America are either made in South America or imported from China and South Korea.
Right.
So GM's already got a bunch of vehicles going to South America from Korea. And so I could see them saying, you know what, why don't we go to South America first because of what I already said, but also the Chinese they're taking over. And we can't possibly take them on by ourselves. Let's split the cost.
Could be a way to look at that from a competitive standpoint,
Right.
to try to go after the Chinese, taking that blocking that market share to go to the Chinese companies. And it could also be a way to not do this in the major markets right now with each other as they're trying to develop this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That does make sense, John. I could see that point.
Okay, so if we look at Hyundai Group, I mean, they are doing well in other parts. You were mentioning India earlier. I mean, they're very strong. General Motors, no. What is the possibility now? This is going way out on a limb. The companies combined. I mean, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 5 years from now, but maybe within the decade.
They certainly don't overlap like they might have previously or used to overlap. If you look at how GM has changed their focus and you say North America and China, well, take China out of that mix now. And it really, to a degree anyway, obviously they're still doing some development there with the Buick that launched, but that focus, so the overlap in the markets isn't as strong as it used to be. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but could that happen? Sure.
Well, I mean, if we go back to the point of, peak auto, and the demand,
consolidation is natural then if you can't grow another way.
Right. So that's what I wonder about. Or is it a situation where you say, okay, untapped markets, at least for Western companies, Africa, you mentioned that earlier. Sure. I mean, there's a place. I mean, they're not buying very many vehicles right now, but
that is a market that.
It's a continent of 1 billion people.
It is.
It can be a big market someday.
And India is a large market.
Yeah,
a lot of potential there, right?
So those are probably the last two big growth areas of the world that are left. But I don't think they would ever become one company. I don't think the United States especially would tolerate a Korean company acquiring General Motors. And there's
a partnership. They just find one another. Partnership of equals.
And there's no way
we've heard that before.
that the Chung family in South Korea would allow Hyundai, which is, I mean, it's to South Korea what General Motors was to the United States in the mid-'60s, right? It is a massive part of the economy. But I think what you're going to see is a lot more collaboration amongst the big legacies, recognizing that let's split the cost of a program.
And I think market forces will dictate how that happens and ultimately to what degree it happens. Because if we do hit peak auto and we have all these pressures and we're still moving into these portfolio of technologies and trying to leverage how to do them all, and by the way, move into AVs at some point, you can only do that with scale. And if you can't pay for it with volume growth yourself, then you're going to have to find other ways to do it. So that's going to be a natural outcome of this.
So what is Ford? Does Ford get closer to VW again, or?
Great question. I mean, they're going to have to, I'm sure top management at Ford is under pressure from the board. General Motors just went out and tied up with Hyundai. Who are you tying up with?
Find someone before they're all gone.
Right.
Right.
Right. So what do you think, Gary? What do you think Ford would do?
I think Ford is the recall problems are not sufficiently being addressed by that company in a pants on fire way that I think they need to be. I think that they probably are not even paying any attention to that. They're trying to divert, with their Model T moment, and I think that is a horrible phrase for them to use, because I think the model
this is not a Model T moment.
I mean, the Model T is truly an icon. I mean, I know they call their vehicles iconic vehicles, but you know what? They're iconic vehicles because the public said they're iconic vehicles.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the corporation saying they're iconic vehicles. So huge, over 90 recalls so far this year. How can management
still have launch problems,
right,
with plants and vehicles that they've launched and that are just redesigned? So that's an issue. Manufacturing's an issue.
And so until they address that, looking to do other things, it strikes me as being silly. So I mean, what can they introduce on Monday, John? I mean, they've announced basically it'll be a mid-sized truck.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's say that they're going to, it occurred to me that maybe if we go back 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking a whole lot on the show about skateboard, right? When's the last time we said skateboard on this show? I don't remember. Right. And so, it's got a skateboard and you can put whatever you want on top of it, and it's, easier to make. Well, great. Is that going to put the world
new information, is it? Yeah.
Is it the world on wheels? Nope.
I think what I expect to see is a very cost competitive small electric pickup that has decent profit margins. That's what I expect to see. Because if they come out with something and say, well, we're going to lose less money on this one, it's dead on arrival. But if they say, look, this has got a 20% gross margin on it at the base level, now you're talking.
Okay, and we established earlier in the show that fewer and fewer people are buying EVs. Hell of a market to get into.
I think that's going to be challenging. It's going to have to be something really compelling that we're not expecting.
Totally. It better knock our socks off. Because you're right, Gary. If we come out and go, well, that's nice, but it ain't no Model T of EVs, they're going to have egg on their face. I don't expect that to happen.
You think they're going to see?
I think they're going to show us something that we go, wow, didn't see that one coming.
I hope so for their sake. I really do. I really do.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay, one quick one to end the show on, I think. Did you guys see this thing that Tesla's taken out a patent for a sucker car? Going to put 4 fans under the car. If you know the Chaparral 2J Can-Am car, which Jim Hall, who ran Chaparral, invented it, and then Brabham actually did a sucker car in Formula One. It was so good it was banned essentially after one race. And then Gordon Murray, who did design the Brabham, came out with a performance. What was that? The T5, I think.
Right.
T50.
Did you ever sell any?
I looked into it. They sold all of them out. They made like 100 or 200, and they were gone.
Okay.
I think they came out in 2020.
Yeah, Sean's saying that they sold every single one that they built. But anyway, That's the kind of thing that number one, I think Tesla needs. I think to get
They
it,
need a win.
They need something where
Yeah.
people go, wow.
Yeah, but I think that's the innovation and the creative thinking that I think has gotten Tesla up until this year to where they were.
That's right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that develops and if they bring it into a production vehicle.
Yeah, and not 5 years from now. Yeah, I'm
Correct.
sick of waiting for Tesla
Yeah,
to deliver on stuff they've tantalized us with.
right.
Maybe they'll put that technology in the Roadster. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, that's what it's supposedly going to go into, is the Roadster. But
Mhm.
Isn't that somewhere in space right now?
I think there is one floating around out there still.
right. Anyway, we got to wrap it up. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on.
Great
the
to be
show.
with
Always
you.
good to have
Always
you here.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, good time.
And Gary, maybe next week we'll talk about this Ford Model T of
Yeah,
EVs.
I
see
think
what
we
the heck
will.
they got there. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for having tuned in.
Okay.